Hey everyone, it's Rachel from Sugar Maple Farmhouse, and today we're going to make Italian sausage stuffed acorn squash. If you have never had an acorn squash before, I will tell you it is very similar to pumpkin. It is sweet and yet still a little bit savory. And when you take that and you stuff it with Italian sausage, which is very savory, you get a beautiful, delightful, and unexpected meal in one bowl. Let's get started and I'll show you how to make it. The first thing you are going to do is cut up your acorn squash. So I have 2 of them here. This is going to make 4 servings. This one's a little small. Try to find them in this size. What you want to do is, number 1, make sure that it can rest on its top appropriately. If it can't, like this one, you're going to have to cut off a little bit of the top and a little bit of the bottom. So I will show you how that goes. You want to make sure that they can sit so that they are kind of a nice little bowl for your meal. With the top, go as close to that stem as you can get. The stem is not going to want to be cut, so you might have to go kind of a little bit further than I actually want to go, or you actually want to go. Be careful when you're doing this not to cut into the actual center of the squash. Last time I did this, I did not have to do this part. Mine sat perfectly for me, kind of on their own. So just be careful. You are just kind of taking off this layer. I won't lie, having to do this is a pain in the butt. So if you can find an acorn squash, there we go, that has a nice top and sits perfectly for you, go with that one instead of one that has a stem. I'm a little rough here on my top. Once you have this cut, the top if you need to, and the bottom, you want to cut this in half. And try to get your halves as even as possible. You don't have to keep them even, especially if you're serving somebody who has not a huge appetite. But I like to try to keep them as even as possible. So the inside of these looks like this. And I'm going to grab a bowl and we are going to scoop these out. So very quickly, you just scoop out the center of these and put the seeds aside. You can actually bake the seeds up if you want to. They bake up just like pumpkin seeds. I will leave a link to my pumpkin seed recipe in the description below if you want to cook them, but they come out so much easier. Once that is done, you can put your squash on a baking sheet. If you want, you can kind of work to get some of the stringy stuff out, or you can leave it in there. It doesn't really matter. It's all going to cook up together and you won't even notice the stringiness of it. Okay, so once your squashes are cut and cut in half, what you want to do is add some extra virgin olive oil, and I need a brush. So in the recipe, I will give you a measurement for this, but when I am baking these up, I will just kind of eyeball it and pop that in there, and then take the extra virgin olive oil and brush it all around. So make sure to get it on the top, and by top I mean this part here, so that it helps it roast up really beautifully. Once the extra virgin olive oil is on, give these a good sprinkle of coarse sea salt. This is really all the salt I'll be adding for most of the recipe too, because The Italian sausage brings so much flavor to these that you really just don't need a lot of extra seasoning. And let's do some fresh cracked pepper. All right, now that I have my olive oil, my salt and pepper on them, I'm going to flip them over. And now I'm going to stick them in the oven for about 30 minutes. While the squash is cooking up in the oven, I'm going to start the filling. And we simply start that with some extra virgin olive oil again in our pan. Once that is in, let this heat until the extra virgin olive oil shimmers. With this setup, it's kind of hard for me to tell sometimes when that is, but basically you want it to get warm before you put your onions in. You guys may notice I'm using lights today. It's not something I normally do, but it is so gloomy here that you couldn't see when I set everything up. So I hope this comes out okay. I hope you're able to see everything okay. I hate using lights, but it was really so dark out that I couldn't even, like, it was just you weren't gonna be able to see anything. So I figured I'd set them up. All right, let's add our onions first. There we go. And once the onions go in, you want to cook them until they're soft. So that's probably going to be anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. I like to keep stirring the onions constantly throughout this process because I don't like them getting any char in this recipe. So I like to keep them moving in my pan. It doesn't take very long, and I think it just makes them a little more caramelized for the recipe itself. Once the onions are nice and soft, it's time to add the garlic. And this is 2 to 3 cloves, large cloves of minced garlic. And again, just keep mixing in the pan. With the garlic especially, it tends to burn a little easily. So just mix it until we add in the Italian sausage, and then you can walk away for a minute or so. Basically, this recipe cooks up pretty fast, so it's not a lot of hands-on time on the stove. Most of the work is being done in the oven. This whole part right here, cooking everything up for the stuffing, only takes probably about 10 minutes total, maybe 15 minutes. All right, my garlic is nice and fragrant, so I'm going to put in my Italian sausage. So if you cannot find this uncased, you can buy regular Italian sausage and uncase it yourself. This is a pound of Italian sausage. Sometimes I honestly prefer uncasing it myself. I always feel like there's a little bit more that I get in the casing than when I just buy it uncased. But you may have noticed I love Italian sausage. It's one of my favorite meats to work with. It's just so flavorful already. And you can just get it from the grocery store, or you can get it from your butcher. If you're getting it from the butcher, I would suggest making sure you don't get one that has like any apples or anything extra in it, unless you want to throw off the recipe a little bit. You could, because I think apples would actually be delightful in this now that I think about it. But just go for plain Italian sausage maybe the first time you make this, and make sure you like it before you kind of experiment with other ways to make it or other ingredients. Also, if you like spicy, you can do a spicy Italian sausage too. Mild Italian sausage is already a little bit spicy. If you get sweet Italian sausage, it won't be have really any of that spice in it that you might get with a little bit of a mild. I prefer mild for cooking this recipe because, like I said, I like a little bit of that juxtaposition in this recipe where I got the sweet and the savory and the spicy. The little bit of spice just adds a nice kind of extra flavor in there too, especially because I'm going to put cheese in this and it goes so perfectly with that. Basically, what you want to do now is just brown your Italian sausage. I wouldn't leave your pan for too long because the Italian sausage does have a tendency to kind of get stuck to the bottom of the pan. In some recipes, that's fine because you're going to be deglazing the pan. In this recipe, we're not really deglazing the pan. So you want to make sure that that doesn't end up being the case where you have a bunch of burnt Italian sausage on the bottom of your pan. Also, you guys, with the holidays coming up, I want to remind you that my book is out. My recipe book is out. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble. I think you can buy it on Target still too. And I will leave some links below in the description for you. Let's turn that heat down a bit. I've just been having such a great time with doing things for the book. The local TV station came here a couple weeks ago and interviewed me, and that just played this past weekend on the news. And then this morning, I went and I picked up some pine shavings for the donkeys because it's going to get cold, and I like to stock up on them ahead of time. And the person loading my cart with the pine shavings was like, "Oh, Rachel, I saw you on the news." And I was like, I was so awkward. Some people at like my kids' sports stuff have mentioned something, and I don't mean to be awkward, but it's been fun. It's been exciting. It's been surprising. All right. I am pretty much browned. I'm going to give it just a few more minutes and then add the next ingredients. All right, now with everything all nice and brown, I'm going to add in the cranberries and the walnuts. There's just so many flavors that go together so well in this recipe, and I think sometimes you don't realize how well some of these things can go together until you actually try it. But this has been one of my favorite recipes that I've created this season. I just love it. It's just so good. So when you make this, I would suggest not starting your topping until about 15 minutes into the cooking process for the squash itself. I started this a little early. I'm probably going to turn off my heat and add my spinach and then just let this sit. I am going to add my cheese last because Kevin does not love cheese. I love cheese. So when I made this, he was like, well, I think I'd like it better without cheese. So I'm going to stuff his squash first without the cheese, and then I'm going to go back and add the cheese to the recipe and stuff the rest of the squashes. He will eat some cheese on top, but he doesn't even eat cheese on his burgers. He is a straight burger guy, no cheese. Thank you very much. And I am a cheese makes everything better kind of girl. All right, that looks good. I'm going to turn the power off to this. Give this a second. 2 cups of spinach go into this recipe. You can add a little more if you want. What I would do is if you feel like you're having trouble fitting the spinach into the pan, because you really want to pack the 2 cups. And when I say pack, I mean like push it down into your cup. If you're having trouble fitting some of that into your pan, do it in batches. The heat is off on this, so you're not really trying to cook the spinach. You kind of want it to wilt in there to get the nutrients in there, a little bit of the flavor, give it some green, but it's all going to cook together in the oven anyways. So this is baby spinach this time. I will leave the ends on. I almost always do. And just let it wilt down on its own. Starting to get there, so I'm going to add the rest of this. If you do find yourself where you have some time before your squash is done, you can just turn off the heat and cover your Italian sausage. All right, we are all done in the oven for the first part of this. Now I'm going to very carefully flip these over. Don't they look amazing? I like to really pack this in so you are really getting a hearty meal in the squash, and that everybody is feeling full and satisfied after eating this. So I mounded up on top of the squash just a little bit. And now that his is done, I'm going to add my cheese. This is a smoked Gouda. And in the recipe, I have that you can add 4 to 6 ounces of this. If you do have someone who doesn't want cheese, you might want to add just a little less. 6 ounces would probably be a little much for the rest of the filling that's left. I did turn the heat back on slightly so that the cheese will melt just a little bit. Now that the cheese has melted a little bit, I am going to turn off my heat and stuff the rest of these. You may end up with a little bit of extra filling, and that's fine. I ate it last time I made these. I love the filling in this. It's just so good. All right, so now I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit more cheese on top. Kevin said he's good with a little bit of cheese on top. It's probably the perfect amount for him, just a few slivers. And these are going to go back in for another 7 to 10 minutes. Look at those. Don't they look beautiful? And delicious too. All right, they are done. They smell incredible, and I cannot wait to dig in. So I'm gonna let these cool for just a few minutes. You should probably give them maybe, I don't know, 3 to 5 minutes to cool before you serve them. And then you can just serve them up just like this and let everybody dig in. You can top them with a little bit of fresh parsley. I find that it just gives it some really nice flavor right at the end there. Then enjoy. The squash is so perfectly cooked from this process that it just comes right out with your fork, and you can scoop it all up together. Just so good. Like I said, I think this is my favorite fall recipe this year. The flavors just work together so perfectly. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope that you love this Italian sausage stuffed acorn squash recipe. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave those in the comments section below, and I'll be sure to get back to you. Also, I will leave a link to the full blog post for this recipe down in the description below at sugarmaplefarmhouse.com. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I'd love if you would subscribe. I cook, I DIY, I craft, I garden, a little bit of everything. And if you like a little bit of everything too, I hope you'll come join us. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great day.